Horrors found in dark web marketplaces. The dark web. This is a documentary production intended for educational. If you want to read it, you can read it.
It's summer 2022. And 27-year-old Reed Churchill is doing what he does best, playing tennis. The Arkansas native has shaped his life around the sport, having won several major tournaments and even once finished in the top 70 in the Southern Division of the U.S. Tennis Association, a national caliber ranking for junior players. After studying sports management in university, he got a job working for the Summerhill Racket Club in Fayetteville, teaching tennis at every level. In this particular game, however, Reed would sustain an injury, one that we don't know the exact nature of. What we do know is that it left him with chronic pain. Seeking relief, he decided to turn to the internet, but not the World Wide Web we all know and use every day.
The dark web.
No, Reed turned to the dark web.
I've always thought about making a video on the dark web, but the dark web isn't like normal Google where you could search up, for instance, Hitman for hire. You have to know like specific URLs to access those type of websites. And on top of that, a lot of times you need passwords to go even further, like a 2FA. I think it's interesting, but I don't think it's like an actual like video I could do or that I would really want to do. I'd probably get hacked.
He loaded up a special web browser called Tor, one that's capable of accessing the dark web, and found a marketplace. However, he had to make an account before he could see what was available, a lengthy process that involved mandatory two-factor authentication and even setting up PGP encryption. After about an hour of setup time, Reed was in, and he began combing through the listings, eventually settling on a bottle of oxycodone pills, a behind-the-counter painkiller commonly prescribed to those with acute musculoskeletal pain.
Bro, this is sketchy though, going on the dark web for medicine. I feel like there has to be better ways than doing this. I feel like I would be so scared of it just being laced, since they can't even track you.
He fills out a short form and then hits order, hopeful that the medication will help him feel normal again.
Damn.
Sometime later, maybe days, possibly months, Reed's father David arrives at his door. He rings the bell, but his son doesn't let him in.
No answer.
Concerned, he uses his key and comes in anyways. He calls out, but his son doesn't answer. He wonders if he simply isn't home. But that thought is soon erased when he walks into the living room.
Man.
There, Reed is all splayed out, half on the couch, half on the floor. His skin is cold and his body is stiff. There's no question about it. He's dead.
That's sad, bro. If this is from the medicine, then it's sad to think he was a happy tennis coach and gets injured and he just wants to rejuvenate himself by doing any means possible and ends up just killing himself even faster.
After an autopsy, authorities would find fentanyl in Reed's system. The pills he bought on the dark web were laced with the incredibly dangerous substance.
Yeah.
It would take a few years of intensive investigation, but the FBI's Joint Criminal Opioid and Darknet Enforcement Unit would eventually identify the marketplace Reed had ordered his medication from, a platform called Incognito, one of the largest dark web narcotics bazaars ever operated. It had been live since 2020, offering users all manner of illicit substances. There was one rule though: no fentanyl. The substance was simply too dangerous. Miscalculating a dose even slightly was enough to kill somebody. Still though, counterfeit meds that were nothing more than fentanyl-laced substances masquerading as legitimate prescription medicine was a problem on the site, and enforcement from the platform's admins on this particular issue was poor.
I wonder what's the point of putting fentanyl in it? Is it just to like kill off the customers immediately? Because if they make it like placebo and not even put anything in these pills, maybe a chance that they'll have returning customers like, okay, maybe I need to like up the dose, but just killing your customers immediately? Unless there's some like sick motive behind selling these.
Keep that thought in mind for later. The main admin on the site was a user named Pharaoh. Not much was known about him. The platform he had designed had security and privacy ingrained in every corner of it, but that wouldn't stop the FBI from finding weak spots. Specifically, authorities were able to trace several large crypto transfers from some of the market's known wallets to a personal account at a centralized crypto exchange. If you've ever dealt in crypto before, you'll know that these massive exchanges require a lot of personal information, even copies of passports and other forms of photo ID.
Huh.
This would end up being Pharaoh's downfall, whose real name was Rayxiang Lin.
Yikes.
He was a Taiwanese man and was shockingly only 23 years old at the time he was identified in 2024, meaning he was only 19 when he started one of the dark web's largest drug markets.
Damn, bro, he's my age. That's the thing too. Like, having as much security measures as like possible, I feel like the government's so powerful, it's only a matter of time before you get caught.
Sensing the authorities were closing in on him, Lin would execute an exit scam on incognito. This is fairly common on the dark web. Most marketplaces operate on crypto, and transactions usually happen through an escrow wallet owned by the marketplace. Without any rules or regulations, and with the people operating these platforms being anonymous criminals, many dark web marketplaces end when the person operating them decides to shut everything down and run away with all the crypto in the escrow wallet. In Incognito's case, Lin managed to steal at least $1 million worth of user deposits according to the DOJ. But he didn't stop there. Despite claiming to have built Incognito with security and privacy in mind, Lin, in reality, had been secretly collecting all user data on the site, including private messages, transaction info, and order details. He threatened to publish it all to the internet if vendors didn't pay him a ransom.
Surprise, surprise. Anyway, if anything were to leak to law enforcement, I guess something entire dump of all the orders, 862,000 crypto transactions. Good lord. Yes, this is an extortion. Bro, this is like the worst thing you could see on your computer.
It wouldn't matter though, because Lin would be arrested on May 18th, 2024, and authorities would seize the entire Incognito database he had copied, giving them ample evidence
Which sold more than $100 million of illegal narcotics.
to go after and arrest the vendor that had sold Reed Churchill the pills that had killed him.
RIP, bro.
His father David would give a tear-filled testimony at Lin's sentencing hearing in February 2026, labeling the day he discovered his son's body as the worst day of his life. He would look Lin in the eyes and state,
"Remember this face while you're in a cell."
Minutes after David's testimony, however, something would be revealed that would turn this entire case upside down. A detail that would bring into question the entire legitimacy of the FBI's investigation. But before we get to it, a word from today's sponsor,
Nope, we're gonna skip this.
After David left the stand, Lin's defense attorneys would drop a bombshell. Lin didn't run Incognito alone. He had several moderators working with him, each of which had varying levels of power on the marketplace, which had moved more than $100 million worth of product in its lifespan. According to court filings, one of these moderators that allegedly held more power than the rest was working for the FBI. That's right, the FBI had an informant high up in Incognito, and according to Lin,
They were essentially managing the site. They handled daily operations and every facet you would expect from an administrator lacking technical expertise.
I was like, that doesn't even like shock me. There's just so much corruption in the world. You don't even know what to trust anymore. The FBI investigating the FBI. Yeah, we found nothing wrong.
Lin alleged that while he managed the technical side of the site, the informant ran the day-to-day operations, something supported in their communications with the FBI, with the informant themselves stating that they personally oversaw 95% of the transactions on the site.
Wow.
In fact, the FBI informant had the explicit authority to remove any vendor they caught selling fentanyl, but they not only chose not to do that, but they even reportedly engaged in several debates with Lin on the issue of fentanyl, allegedly advocating to get the very dangerous substance unbanned from the marketplace. The prosecution would argue that this was all necessary for the authorities to build a chain of evidence that would eventually lead to Pharaoh being unmasked and charged, and they'd also insist that Lin was the ultimate decision maker on the site. But the judge would express a decent amount of skepticism about why the FBI allowed the operation to continue as long as it did, after they had already infiltrated the site's upper management.
Bro, if the judge is questioning the government, 1 week later we're not going to hear from that judge anymore. He's going to randomly have 16 bullet holes to the back of his head. Self-inflicted.
Lin's defense would state that this informant may have even had a role in the sale of the exact pills that killed Reed Churchill, but it wouldn't do much for Lin. He'd be sentenced to 30 years in prison, and as of July 2026, he plans to appeal, the existence of the FBI informant being central to his planned defense. Picture this. A grieving father walks into a courtroom to confront the man responsible for his son's death. He delivers the most emotionally devastating statement of the entire hearing.
I think that's the worst thing that could ever happen to a parent. Finding your lifeless kid on the ground. I don't think there's anything worse on earth to happen to a parent.
And then has to sit and learn that the US government itself had an embedded agent apparently personally running the platform. What do you think his reaction may have been? We don't know what went through David's head in that moment. He's never commented publicly on the revelation of the FBI informant. But we do know one thing. Dark web marketplaces have resulted in all manner of horrors, and many of them aren't exactly what you would expect. The American government didn't just have an agent helping to run a digital drug marketplace. They were also the ones who created the dark web in the first place. Back in the 1990s, while the internet was exploding in popularity, the US government wanted to find a way to use this new technology to allow spies operating in foreign countries to phone home. The problem is, the internet wasn't secure enough for these sorts of communications, so the US Naval Research Laboratory developed something called onion routing, a technique for anonymous communication over a network that involves wrapping data in several layers of encryption that gets bounced between different network nodes.
Yeah, but how encrypted and private is this? If the government created it, they know how to unwrap the onion.
Each one peeling away a layer of the encryption. This was and is the basic technology that the dark web is built upon. Websites are long addresses built from random alphanumeric characters derived from cryptographic keys, and they all end in the .onion domain. In the early 2000s, the US government would publicly release the Tor network, something we now call the dark web. If you're wondering why the USA would want regular people using something like the dark web, the explanation was actually simple. If only spies were using something like Tor and accessing Onion websites, then it would be quite easy for foreign adversaries to discover them by merely looking for any and all Onion traffic. It didn't matter if they couldn't read it or see where it was going, just finding evidence of any Onion traffic would be enough to know that there was a spy somewhere. But that wouldn't be the case if everyday people were using the dark web. The increased level of noise would allow agents to blend into the crowd, and finding Onion traffic wouldn't necessarily be a digital paper trail leading back to some foreign operative. So the US government—
I don't know, that just seems fishy just hearing it. Why would a spy want to use a designated spy service? It's like, yeah, if you're breaking the law and you're a spy, come use our website over here and you're not gonna get caught. That doesn't really sound too hot.
to unleash the dark web onto the world. And guess what it almost immediately became known for? As you can imagine, there's a reason the dark web earned its name. The majority of Onion websites are illicit in some fashion, with the biggest category of illegal websites being drug marketplaces. The second largest category, however, is illicit finance. Hydra is a marketplace that once operated in this category. While you could also find illicit substances here too, this Russian platform offered many other different categories of products, including stolen credit cards, bank credentials, forged passports, and even physical cash, both counterfeit and real. The site also had a unique innovation. Instead of operating on traditional courier services like other marketplaces, Hydra instead operated its own dead drop system. Cladmen, low-paid independent couriers, would pick up packages and bury them in parks, place them under benches, tape them to the inside of garbage bins. If you bought something on Hydra, you would receive a set of GPS coordinates and a photo of the hiding spot where your package was waiting for you.
That's kind of cool, actually. Imagine being a random person sitting on this bench, drop your phone, you see a random package just taped underneath it, and you're like, what is this? Open it, it's like $10,000. That's definitely happened before.
The CLAD system made Hydra incredibly difficult for the authorities to prosecute, but just like Incognito, it too would eventually fall, being taken offline in 2022 after German authorities seized the platform's infrastructure. Between Hydra and Incognito, you can get a rough idea as to the sorts of offerings you can find on the dark web. It mostly comes down to drugs and stolen/forged goods. But that's what you can find on the big platforms, the Goliaths that process millions or even billions of dollars and then eventually get taken down by the authorities. What about the smaller platforms? Are there websites on the dark web that offer a more niche selection? In mid-2026, open source intelligence researchers working for the magazine India Today would come across a strange set of websites on the dark web. They were all marketplaces, but they weren't selling narcotics or forged documents. The prices for these items were much higher, tens of thousands of dollars even. What could cost so much money on the dark web?
Humans?
Human liver for sale.
Human liver? What are you gonna do with a human liver for $35,000? Also, spending $35,000 in one just, boom, swift purchase on the dark web. It's just like, I don't know, I really can't imagine anyone getting to that point of life of like, alright, I got $1 million to spend, let me get 10 livers, let me get 2 hearts, 20 eyeballs.
Human lungs for sale. Human heart for sale.
$69,000 for a human heart.
These sites were all claiming to offer real human organs for exorbitant prices.
Like, what can you do with that? Sell it to a hospital? I don't even think you could do that.
The global illicit organ trade is huge, with 5 to 10% of transplanted kidneys worldwide being, quote-unquote, illegally acquired. The intelligence team decided to pose as a buyer seeking a kidney in India. They began the purchase process, and the seller quickly moved the conversation over to Telegram, the private messaging app of choice for organized crime worldwide.
Bro, Telegram is just straight gooners, bro. I wouldn't know personally, but I know a lot of Telegram people are just straight gooners.
The seller claimed to have what they described as a fresh harvest kidney, available within a 24-hour window, and later offered a live matching donor in Delhi, supposedly a 24-year-old male with O negative blood. The seller quoted the intelligence team $50,000, which they claimed covered surgery, hospital stay, airport pickup, and even donor compensation. The seller then demanded a $2,000 deposit in the form of Bitcoin to reserve the donor, with the remaining balance being payable after the transplant was complete. India Today would reach out to a selection of doctors who all said that no hospital in the country would be legally able to accommodate a procedure like this, and the likelihood of an entire hospital being complicit in a major crime like this was essentially zero. The researchers would continue to speak to the seller, who provided the name of a Mumbai-based urologist. That was the end of the information drop, however. The seller wasn't going to give up anything more until they got their $2,000 in Bitcoin. The research team was able to match the name of the doctor given by the seller to a real urologist working for a private hospital, but they weren't able to verify whether or not it was the same doctor the seller was referring to.
What?
The India Today
I feel like that was just like a huge info drop that like, maybe I zoned out, but I don't even know.
Investigation was left without a definitive answer as to the legitimacy of these marketplaces, but the dark web monitoring and security firm Dark Owl would reach a conclusion about similar platforms back in 2023. They too would find several sites claiming to offer human organs for sale, for similar prices as the platforms India Today investigated. While they didn't contact any sellers, they were able to piece together the truth by analyzing the sites themselves.
I feel like the only way you could get rid of these organs and maybe profit is to sell it to corrupted hospitals. But how often are you going to find a corrupted hospital? Or maybe like they do underground surgery. Someone's doing surgery in their basement. Oh, I need a kidney for this surgery. But that's like, who would even go for that too?
For one thing, many of them seem to state that human organs are viable outside the body for an entire year, a claim that is scientifically impossible.
Yeah, right.
Moreover, many of these sites use the same stock images of organs. They also analyzed the Bitcoin address listed on one site. The total amount it's received in his life was $34,000, but it was currently sitting at $0 at the time of Dark Owl's investigation. The majority of transactions on that address were only between $1 to $200, far below the tens of thousands of dollars the items on the site were listed for. By the way, check out this screenshot they took. Why is this the image the platform decided to use? The listing is for a human heart from Central America. Is this some sort of mistake? In the same investigation, Dark Owl would also uncover a marketplace that claimed to sell human meat, apparently sourced from morgues and road accidents, according to the website.
Yeah, I feel like billionaires have definitely eaten human meat. I know billionaires get to a point where they're so bored, they have so much money, they don't know what to do with it. They've definitely tried human meat.
Conclusion reached by Dark Owl and other security firms who have investigated platforms like this is that the majority of dark web marketplaces claiming to offer human organs for sale are nothing but scams. Think about it. What's an easier operation to run? Selling actual human organs on the internet, which involve incredibly complex logistics and sophisticated skilled work requiring all manner of seasoned professionals, or just scamming people who are looking for organs out of a bit of crypto. That's the thing about the dark web. You hear all sorts of stories about the scary things you can find for sale, but a lot of it just isn't real. In fact, the vast majority of marketplaces on the dark web are outright scams. It's much harder to find a legitimate platform offering real things.
That makes sense. Honestly, it just doesn't even compute to like my head how anyone could even want to get into that market of, okay, let me go flip a kidney real quick. I kind of understand, unfortunately, the drugs parts because kind of everyone's on that. But yeah, the human stuff, it's surprised.
In fact, sometimes you can't even be sure if the legitimate platform you're using is real or not. Because onion links are in the form of random characters, it's very easy to make a fake version of an existing platform to pass off as a real thing, with unsuspecting users not noticing that the URL is different. Yes, scams are the most common form of illicit activity happening on the dark web, but no scam has been quite as notorious and dangerous as hitmen for hire.
Yeah. I think a lot of hitmen for hire websites on the dark web are just, I think they're called like honey traps or honey something. AKA it's just created by the government and they just see, okay, who's foolish enough to buy a hitman on the dark web and then just immediately pack them up. I remember they found a woman like that on the surface web where they tried hiring a hitman off of Craigslist.
The idea of hiring a hitman through the internet is almost as old as the World Wide Web itself. In 1995, former Intel engineer Jim Bell wrote a series of essays
Holy jawline, bro.
Titled Assassination Politics. It outlined a potential internet platform that could offer bounties on public officials, which would be crowdfunded by disgruntled citizens. A user could anonymously propose someone to be killed, offer a dollar amount, and could even make a prediction on whether or not the bounty would be successful, a precursor to the actual prediction markets that exist today.
Bro, prediction
The
markets.
assassination part of the platform, though, would never come to fruition. In 2013, the platform outlined by Bell would actually be attempted by a dark web user calling themselves Kuwabataka Sanjuro, naming themselves after the conniving Ronin from the 1961 Kurosawa movie Yojimbo. Their platform would collect bounties on public officials at the highest level, some of them as large as $75,000. Sanjuro's assassination market was
$75,000 to assassinate a president. I think that's not worth it. No amount of money, since regardless you're gonna get caught. But $75,000, at least offer $500,000.
garner a lot of buzz
I would never do that. I would never do
in
that.
the mainstream media, but it would ultimately fail to lead to any known killings. Sanjuro would eventually cash out $1 million from the platform and then take it offline in 2018, rendering the entire thing a scam. That's how the story tends to go. A site claiming to offer some sort of hitman service pops up, and it either ends up being a scam or some sort of FBI honeypot. The most infamous of these sites is a 2015 platform called Besa Mafia. They claim to be the official online presence of the Albanian Mafia, providing services in every corner of the world. They supposedly offered everything from getting someone beat up to a professional ex-military sniper hit, an option suitable for anybody from CEOs to small celebrities, according to them. This is apparently much different than a basic hitman, which only costs $5,000. This cheaper alternative is supposedly carried out by a local gang member that, quote-unquote, did murder before. They even have the decency
Yeah, I've did murder before.
to avoid booking expensive hotels, and they don't even smoke at the scene of the crime. But keep in mind that they can only hit normal people. It's a little hard to believe that anybody could take something like this seriously. It reads like something a kid would write. It wasn't written by a kid though, it was conceptualized by somebody going by the name of Yura. Believed to be an Albanian man living in Romania, leaked admin messages from the site would reveal that Yura once stated that the platform's secret purpose was to scam criminals out of their money and to report potential murders to the police. Whether he intended to make good on that last part is uncertain, as in 2016, a cybercrime researcher named Chris Montero would discover the site, as well as several critical security flaws. He was able to get in and read every single customer interaction on the platform, over 3,000 messages. From this, he was able to extrapolate that the Besa Mafia had actually received 38 real and paid-for kill orders, complete with details and pictures of the potential victims.
Yeah, that doesn't really surprise me. Honestly, some people just have such hatred for people in the world, unnecessary hatred. We gotta spread more love and positivity, that they'll do anything to get rid of them, and they're probably desperate, like, I'll give you my life savings to get rid of this person. Like, geez, bro, just like, don't talk to them anymore.
Some of these stories were incredibly disturbing, like that of John Musbach. This New Jersey man had previously been charged with a heinous and unmentionable crime in 2015. A year later, he would pay 40 bitcoins to the Besa Mafia to have his young victim assassinated before he stood trial. He'd eventually be sentenced to 38 months in federal prison for the conspiracy. Over the next decade, Montero and his team would continue their investigation, uncovering several other hitman for hire platforms operated by Yura, each with their own exploitable security flaws. They'd eventually uncover more than 1,000 verified kill orders. In 2022, the Romanian authorities would crack down on the Besa Mafia, raiding 7 houses and arresting 5 men. It's unknown whether Yura was among them. Some of the hits uncovered by Chris and his team would lead to real legal charges being brought against those who had ordered them. Some of them would even foreshadow real murders. There is one case, though, in the recovered archives of the Besa Mafia that just doesn't make any sense. Brian Njoroge was a US military serviceman stationed in Kentucky. Born in 1996, he supposedly had a very active social media presence and was of Kenyan descent. In early June 2018, he was on leave and had booked a trip to Clarksville, Indiana, opting to stay in an Airbnb. Little did he know that someone had taken out a hit on him. On May 29th, a user going by the name Toonbib would contact an administrator on the Besa Mafia website. They transferred around $5,500 worth of Bitcoin into the platform's wallet and outlined that they wanted Brian dead. They attached a yearbook photo of him and the address of the Airbnb he was staying at, mentioning that he would be there from June 1st to 11th. The administrator would respond stating that they would assign an operative and the job would be done in a week, but Toonbib would never respond. This would be the end of the interaction. On June 9th, a man walking his dog in Clarksville would notice something odd lying under the bleachers in a local baseball field. He'd walk a little closer to get a better look, only to find that it was a human body. The police are called and the corpse is identified as Brian Njoroge. They'd run an investigation and would piece together that Brian had stolen a gun from a nearby shooting range the previous day and had taken it to the baseball field to end it all. The coroner would then rule that the death resulted from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and the case would be closed within days.
I wonder if this guy tried hiring a hitman on himself because he was too scared of potentially committing it. I don't know, that's just a theory. But if it's self-inflicted, why would someone hire a hitman? I don't know.
The lead detective would state that he had been aware of the hit bought on the dark web, but ultimately disregarded it as there was no factual evidence to suggest anyone other than Brian being involved in this case. The kill order wasn't the only suspicious piece of evidence. When the police searched Njoroge's home, they'd find that his computer, camera, and 2 smartphones were all missing. They'd never be recovered. Neither would the bullet that killed Brian, which was never located by police. Even more questionable, however, was Brian's life insurance policy. It was worth $400,000, and just 1 month before his death, he had switched the beneficiary from his parents to a female friend. This friend has never been publicly identified, but many speculate that it could potentially be the Toonbib that ordered a hit from the Besa Mafia. They clearly knew intimate details about his life, right down to the address of the Airbnb he was staying at. There have been several other higher profile deaths.
How often does like life insurance scams really actually go successfully though, since I feel like it's dead obvious if someone ups their life insurance, like, yeah, if I die, just pay this person a bunch of money. And then they randomly die even though they're healthy, had a good mental state. And they're like, yeah, make sure the money goes to this person though. I feel like that's like a clear case.
It's connected to the Besa Mafia, like Amy Louise Allwine. She was the wife of Pastor Stephen Allwine, and in May 2016, the FBI would knock on her door to inform her that someone had bought a kill order on her on the dark web. She too would eventually end up dead.
Whoa, what is going on?
In that case, it was revealed that her husband had not only ordered the hit, but had ultimately been the
This is a dead creepy photo. What is going on?
one to murder her after realizing he had been scammed. Every death attached to the Besa Mafia more or less plays out in that fashion. Someone places a hit, realizes it's not going to happen, and so they take matters into their own hands. That is except for Brian Njoroge. He's the only death that wasn't ruled a murder. It's certainly possible that the police's official story about Brian could be true, but wouldn't it be a crazy coincidence if somebody paid thousands of dollars to take out a hit on him just 1 week before his death? Samuel Njoroge, Brian's father, maintains that the police investigation was fishy from the beginning, and he disputes their official narrative for his son's death. He's also previously stated that there's a number of inconsistencies between the police report and the coroner's autopsy, but those details have never been publicly revealed. Brian was buried in the Dallas-Fort Worth National Cemetery on June 19, 2018. No charges have ever been filed in his case. Tombib has never been identified.
I feel like Brian's case, I feel like, yeah, he might have been suicidal. Didn't want to take his own life, since that's obviously a hard thing to do and no one should ever do that. But then when nothing was happening, his mental state just kept deteriorating and then that happened. That's my hypothesis.
And the police ended their correspondence with independent investigators by stating, "We're done with this case." I'm curious, what do you think happened here? Is this a case of a real hit being carried out? Or is the police's version of events true? Or is there some third possibility that hasn't been brought up yet? Let me know what you think in the comments. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and you want...
Pretty good video. Shout out to this guy. Like, comment, subscribe to me if you guys are new here. Appreciate y'all for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.
Eating on some hot fries. Goddamn, my boy is hot outside. Please don't try to diss me.